Superhero. Chapter 1. Huh? Kevin asked for the third time. What? I didn't hear you. That's because you were not listening to me again, complained Sarah. What are you listening to tomorrow? What are we listening to tomorrow? Asked Kevin, looking confused. I said, you are not listening to me, Sarah shouted into Kevin's ears. Oh, whatever, muttered Kevin. Sarah sighed. That was the problem with Kevin. He never listened. Whenever anyone talked to him, he would respond in a ridiculous way. Now, everyone thought this was odd because Kevin had such big floppy ears. He looked like he could absorb every word floating around in the air, like a vacuum cleaner. That's how big his ears were. Kevin grew his hair long to cover his ears, but they stuck out of his hair anyway. He could have been mistaken for an elf from one of those fairy movies if only his ears had pointed ends. When Kevin was a baby, his ears were almost as big as his head. Thankfully, as he grew bigger, his ears stayed the same size. Imagine how big his ears would have been if they had grown at the same speed as Kevin had grown. He would probably have been able to wrap his face with his ears. Now, even though his ears were not that big, they were still floppy and stuck out like donkey ears on the side of his head. You will grow up to be a good listener, Mom used to tell him. You will listen to other people carefully and understand them well. However, Kevin never listened carefully, so what other people were saying. Some people said that was because he never really paid attention. Some people said he had a hearing problem and simply couldn't hear them clearly. Either way, he had trouble communicating with other people. He will here and there. Even his teacher, Mr. Matthews, had almost given up on him. Kevin, it's your turn to read the next paragraph. Mr. Matthews would say, patiently. A yogurt tree is near the passenger? Kevin would try to respond what he heard in order to make sure he had heard correctly. Never mind, Mr. Matthews was silent and walked over to point out the paragraph for Kevin. Kevin would start reading, and he read quite well. Actually, his grades were all very good. It was just the listening part that what he had trouble with. Kevin simply didn't listen well. Chapter 2: Whispers in the wind. One day, on his way back home from school, Kevin pulled his jacket tightly. It was windy. He ducked his head into his jacket and continued to walk through the blowing wind. Suddenly, Kevin heard something like a whisper. He jerked his head up and looked around. There was no one there. He turned his head around and heard the whisper again. What's going on? He thought. The wind is talking to me. Kevin listened closely to what the whisper was saying. Then, to his amazement, the whisper got louder and clearer. Moreover, the whisper sounded like it was Mr. Matthews' voice. I should give them a pop quiz on the new vocabulary tomorrow, the whisper was saying. Let's see who's been reviewing. Oh, I love pop quizzes. That's another voice. It sounded like Mrs. Harris, the science teacher. I just adored the surprised look on kids' faces. Kevin stood still in confusion. What was his hearing? He was now here near school. He had crossed the streets, walked down 2 blocks, and made the turn to his right. He couldn't even see the school building from where he was standing. Yeah, the voices definitely belonged to his teachers. Maybe I'm going crazy, he began to think. It's because of the Spanish salad I had for lunch. I must be suffering from food poisoning. Kevin started running home. As he ran, he heard new voices. This time it was his mom who was talking to their neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Kevin couldn't help but listen to their conversation. Mr. and Mrs. Brown were going away for a week. Kevin's mom was wishing them a safe trip. Now Kevin was really worried. He wondered what was in the Spanish salad. He had learned that Spanish salad is a source of iron. But was it good for hearing too? Suddenly, another thought popped into his head. Wait a minute. Hey, wait a minute. Maybe I can really hear sounds from far away, he thought to himself. Maybe I have a super power. Maybe I can be superhero. Kevin dashed into the house, kicked off his shoes, and ran up the stairs to his room. He opened his bag on the bed and looked for his vocabulary book. Finally, he found it and sat down with it. Mr. Matthews had said he was going to give a pop quiz on the new vocabulary. Kevin decided to study the 20 new words. If Mr. Matthews gave his class a pop quiz next day, then Kevin would know for sure that he had a super hearing power. Chapter 3, Pop Quiz for Real. The next morning, Kevin arrived at school a few minutes early. He sat at his desk and had one more look at his vocabulary book. Hey, what are you doing? Sarah asked, looking over Kevin's desk. What are you studying for? Huh? Kevin looked up. Wearing shoes? Kevin and Sarah just shook her head and sat in her seat next to him. Kevin stared at him, fuzzing over the vocabulary book. She sure was sitting next to a strange boy. So Mr. Matthews walked into the classroom. He had a mysterious grin on his face. Good morning, everyone. I would like to start the day with a big surprise. Everyone, please clear your desk. All you need are your pencils. Students stuffed their books under their desks. Then Mr. Matthews handed each of them a piece of paper face down. Is everyone ready? Okay, turn the paper over. We are going to have a pop quiz, cried Mr. Matthews. What? asked Sarah looking shocked. A quiz? asked another student. Oh no, protested the boy who was sitting at the back of the class. Everyone moaned and grumbled, but Kevin was filled with excitement. Mr. Matthews was giving out a pop quiz. Kevin smiled and knew that this proved that he had a superpower. He could really hear things from far away. He could be a superhero. Mr. Matthews called out the first word, amazement. The class was silent. He repeated the word once over, then he had the next word, obviously. There were some moans from the class, but Kevin was smiling. Mr. Matthews then said the next word and the next until he had stated all 20 words. After the test, everyone looked exhausted except for Kevin. He looked super relaxed. Mr. Matthews corrected quizzes and marked them. Kevin, Mr. Matthews cursed. You got a perfect score. Congratulations. Mr. Matthews gave Kevin 2 thumbs up. Everyone clapped in admiration. Kevin looked around with pride. Of course he got a perfect score because he had studied for the pop quiz. But the score didn't matter. What mattered was that he knew the pop quiz was coming. His mind was already full of adventures he could have. Lucky you were starting right before the quiz, muttered Sarah. Huh? said Kevin. Never mind. Sarah was turning away. Chapter 4, Superpower. After the day, everything was like magic to Kevin. Hearing things was fun. Listening was much more fun. He learned to concentrate harder so that he could hear some sounds further away. As Kevin practiced his super hearing power, he found new ways to benefit. At lunchtime, he knew exactly when to go into the cafeteria and get the freshest spinach salad. When he needed to go to the bathroom, Kevin listened carefully so he wouldn't have to wait in line. At home, he could watch TV with the volume almost completely turned down so his mom would think he was studying instead. The best part was taking tests. Kevin always knew that he would be on the test because teachers had serious discussions before making the test questions. As a result, Kevin didn't have to study anything. He simply studied exactly what he knew would be on the test. Kevin was enjoying his super hearing power so much that his dream of being a superhero began to slip away. He was busy using the power for himself. Sometimes Kevin heard bullies bullying little kids in an alley blocks away. He simply walked around the block so he wouldn't bump into the bullies. He heard cries of help, but he didn't want to get into trouble. He knew the real superheroes would fly over and save the poor kids from bad guys, but he wasn't ready for that yet. He didn't have flying powers, right? He didn't have super punching powers either. No one would blame him for ignoring those kids. When I'm ordered, thought Kevin, I'll be a superhero. I'll be ready for and ready to fight bad guys then. Right now, I'm not strong enough to save other people. I have to save myself first. Then he just walked away. Chapter 5 Burglary. Burglary? I don't know. One evening, Kevin was taking the garbage out to the garbage can in the backyard. That was the usual chore he did before his mom returned from work. Suddenly, he heard the noise in the house next door. He looked up. A stranger was looking straight at him through the window. Kevin didn't recognize the man's face. The man grinned, showing all his teeth. Then he slowly closed the curtain shut. That was creepy, thought Kevin. I wonder what's going on there. Who was that man? Kevin tried to listen. He listened carefully, but couldn't hear anything. However, the curiosity kept him going. Kevin was sure he hadn't seen the strangers before. Something must be going on. Then Kevin heard small whispers. He focused harder. The voices seemed to grow louder and he could make out the sounds. Two men were talking. Take that too. Put it in the bag. One of the men was saying, it looks valuable. I can't believe these old people kept all this riches to themselves for all these years, said the other man with excitement. If you are finished with the living room, come into the bedroom. We need to open the safe, says the first man. What? Burglars? Kevin screamed in his mind. Oh no, what should I do? Kevin jumped into his house. Crap. Trying not to make any sound, he locked the back door and closed the curtain so that the burglars wouldn't be able to look inside. He raced into the kitchen. He was shivering from head to toe. The burglars in my face. Would he come here when he's finished with that house? Kevin walked up and down the kitchen nervously. He looked at the clock. Mom would arrive in 30 minutes, but he couldn't wait that long. I should just ignore it, thought Kevin. The man didn't seem to care that I saw his face. He smiled, didn't he? If anybody asks me about questions, I'll just say I thought he was a visitor. Calvin couldn't make up his mind. He thought of the old couples who lived next door, Mr. and Mrs. Brown. Sorry, everyone. Calvin couldn't make up his mind. He thought of the old couples who lived next door, Mr. and Mrs. Brown. They were nice to him. Mr. and Mrs. Brown even knitted him a sweater last winter. It was his favorite. Calvin remembered that he had heard them telling his mom that they were going away for a week. Should I call the police? What if the burglars find out that I called? They will find me and they will. He shivered at the thought, but he couldn't sit around and do nothing about it. He grabbed his phone. He dialed the numbers. The ringing sound from the other ends of the line seemed to last forever. Finally, a woman picked up the phone. Western Police, may I help you? Kevin burst out crying and told her about the burglars next door. He explained that he had witnessed and gave her the exact address. Don't worry, the police were already on their way. The woman on the phone was very comforting. Kevin tried to stay calm, but he couldn't look out the window or go upstairs to his room. He sat on the kitchen floor and waited. Within 10 minutes, everything was over. The police surrounded the house and caught the burglars red-handed. The valuable things were returned. Kevin watched from his window. He was peeking from the cover of the window because he didn't want anyone to notice him. Then there was a knock on the front door. Calvin jumped. He peered through the curtain and was relieved to see a police officer. The officer assured Calvin that everything was under control and that nothing would happen to him. The burglars were taken away from him, and he was safe. The officers also thanked him for being brave enough to call the police. It was the right thing to do. Calvin had saved the day. Chapter 6. A hero at last. The next day, the whole school was excited to welcome Calvin, the hero who helped the police catch the burglars. Everyone patted Calvin on the back. Calvin felt good. Your story is in the morning newspapers. I'm so impressed, Sarah said with a smile. Why, thank you, says Calvin. Hey, did you just say thank you, not huh? No, huh? Can you understand what I am saying to you? Asked Sarah in amazement. I guess so, says Calvin. Yeah, I can understand everything you say. Wow, your listening has really improved. Sarah smiled. After that, Calvin could hear to sound near and far. All he had to do was pay attention. As long as he focused, he could hear anything. Mr. Matthews was relieved that he didn't have to shout at Calvin anymore. Sarah was glad to have a normal classmate. Calvin didn't seem so ridiculous now that he understood her clearly. Everyone at school was happy for Calvin. His hearing problem was solved and he was a good listener now. Of course, no one knew that Calvin had a superpower. He was going to keep it a secret. Who knows, maybe the super hearing power would come in handy again. Maybe he could have to use his power to find other bad guys. From that day on, whenever Calvin heard a kids being bullied, he knew exactly what to do. Rather than facing the situation by himself, he always called for help. He didn't need to be ordered stronger to do the right things. He was a young and brave superhero, or you could say he was a superhero. While helping kids in trouble, our superhero paid a special attention to what his teacher were saying. You never know when the next pop quiz is going to be.